The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not be in want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He restores my soul. He guides in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Last week, we started taking a look at Psalm 23, and we're going to continue that. We talked about the fact that there are several different references throughout Scripture that talk about sheep and shepherds, and many of those compare us as people to sheep and Christ as our shepherd. Unfortunately, because we are removed from the idea of being a shepherd, we miss a lot of the instruction and the direction that we're given throughout Scripture when we're compared to sheep. We miss that comparison because we're not familiar with the characteristics of a sheep, and because we don't understand what it really means to be a shepherd. That's something foreign to most of us. Let me give you just a quick little recap of last week. First of all, we know that this psalm was written by King David. We know that he himself was a shepherd. We know he tended his father's flock when he was young. And he wrote this psalm from a shepherd's perspective. He truly understood what it meant to take care of sheep. And he understood the work that was involved in being a shepherd. That relationship to him was very clear. Last week we talked about a couple of verses. I shall not be in want was the first one we went over last week. And we talked about the fact that this has nothing to do with material goods or possession or status, but that I shall not want is really referring to being content, learning to be satisfied right where we are. The fact that we don't need else, but knowing that God has our best in mind and that we don't need to search for anything more. The second piece that we talked about last week was that he makes me lie down in green pastures. And we talked about this last week. It takes a lot for a sheep to want to lay down. There's 4 specific things. First of all, they need to be free from fear. They fear their predators. We talked last week, a sheep really doesn't have any kind of a defense mechanism. They're kind of helpless when it comes to that. So if they at all sense that there's trouble or problems brewing with any predators, they will not relax. They will not be at rest. The second thing we learned is that they must feel safe within their own flock. Interesting to think that conflict can rise even in a flock of sheep. But it does. If they're not comfortable, if they feel threatened by even one of their own, they won't be at peace and they won't lie down. They won't lie down, number 3, if they are dealing with flies or other parasites. We're going to hear about this more later, but right now, we talked last week about flies and insects and parasites that are normal to sheep. They will actually literally drive a sheep crazy. He'll shake his head, he'll run off, he'll beat his head on things because of the flies, the parasites that attack the sheep. Number 4, they must feel free from hunger. No, they must know that their needs, their hunger is going to be satisfied and met before they'll consider lying down. So those 4 things are basically the 4 basic things needed for sheep to have before they're willing to lie down and rest. Because of all this, we understand that it takes a great deal of work on the part of the shepherd to bring peace to his flock. Peace so that he can lie down and rest and not be in fear of anything. This morning we're going to look a little bit further at a few more comparisons and what we can gain from Psalm 23. So the first one this morning that we're going to look at is he leads me beside quiet waters. Sheep, like humans and really any living creature, needs water to survive, right? I'm no doctor, but from what I could gather online, the human is roughly 50 to 60% water. Sheep's no different. They're roughly made up of 70% water. So good, clean, pure water is important to the sheep for a healthy life. Last week we read from a blog, and one of the things they talked about was how the sheep will be satisfied at anything. Let me read this to you again real quick, this portion. Sheep are content with whatever satisfies. When sheep are thirsty, they will stop at a puddle even when clean, still waters are nearby. Sheep are content with filth so long as it satisfies. So if the puddle is full of muddy water, they'll drink that because it's there, even if clean water is close. The sheep recognizes his need, but doesn't know where the best supply is at. He just goes what's for easy and convenient. So his shepherd works very diligently to provide abundant, clean water for his flock and to lead them to that water. As you would expect, if the flock has only dirty, muddy water to drink, it's going to affect the health of that flock. It may satisfy its need for water, but in turn, it makes the sheep susceptible to sickness and disease. By drinking the dirty water, contaminants enter into the sheep's system, making them unhealthy. The shepherd and the sheep also realize that the easiest water to get to, and in fact the cleanest water, is the morning dew that is hanging off the grass, that clear, clean water just right there in the pasture waiting for them each morning. It's not uncommon to find sheep grazing just before dawn, bright and early in the morning. Not only will they get the food that they need, but that dew will satisfy their thirst as well. They will have a crisp, clean, beautiful drink along with their morning food. As the shepherd works diligently to provide clean water for his sheep, so our shepherd provides for us pure and living water that we need for our survival. Yes, I am talking physically in our bodies. We need water for survival. But we also know that we need the living water that God offers us. And that clear, clean water He provides for us day after day. And He went to great lengths to provide that water, didn't He? God offered His only Son for our sacrifice. He sacrificed Himself for us that we might have that clean water every day. It's interesting to think about all the dirty water that this world has to offer us to drink, isn't it? That dirty water that we run to, the dirty water that keeps us from the clean, clear water that is close by. Just like the sheep, we're thirsty. We see the muddy puddle and we drink from it instead of longing for the clear water that's close by. We are indeed thirsty, and no doubt we desire satisfaction. But like the sheep, we're willing to drink that dirty, polluted water that lies right in front of us, instead of the pure, clean water that we're offered. And just like that infested, muddy water that the sheep drinks, when we drink the dirty water of the world around us, we become sick and susceptible to disease, physically or spiritually, when we drink the dirty water of this world. Another lesson we can learn from this little phrase is when the sheep go out and consume their water. I mentioned it just a few minutes ago. It's not uncommon to see the sheep out in the pasture just before dawn, grazing and not only eating but taking in that clear water from the dew. You see, that fresh daily dew that's laid out right before them when they rise is the needed clean water for the day. Often what they take in the morning from that dew can be enough water to sustain them and satisfy them all day long. And there won't be a need to drink anymore throughout the day. Can you see how beautifully that represents our need of laying out our day before the Lord? What better way but to rise early in the morning and to take in the fresh dew of God's Word? Let it restore us, renew us, to replenish our soul before the heat of the day burns down on us and scorches us. To drink that clear water that He provides for us before the world can offer us any of the dirty, disgusting water that it wants to. We can be satisfied and refreshed early in the morning. Of course, don't misunderstand me. There's no right and wrong time to pray. There's no right and wrong time to seek the Lord and to spend time in His Word. But there is something special about making that effort to get up in the morning and to lay your day out before the Lord, to commit it to Him. Everything that's going to take place, everything that's going to come before you, all the cares and concerns that might come after you that day. There is something special about that morning time with the Lord. It can be our complete source of living water for the day. Our shepherd provides for us the clean water we need as His sheep. Secondly, He restores my soul. Have you ever heard of a cast sheep? Some of you may know what that is. This little guy is a cast sheep. A shepherd would use that term to describe a sheep that cannot stand up on his own. There are times when sheep will lie down, and maybe in comfort and peace even. They relax a little bit too much. They roll over onto their backs, and they're unable to get up on their own. That's what it means to be a cast sheep. You can look out across the field, and you'll see the sheep just moving its legs around and squirming, and it cannot turn over. It cannot get back up on its own. And if left in that condition for too long, the sheep will die. It seems maybe a little crazy to us, but lying on its back is bad for a sheep. And if it's left in that condition, it is life-threatening. It's a serious problem that the shepherd must keep a constant watch for across his flock to make sure that there are no cast sheep in his group. If there is one, the shepherd goes to that sheep to help it back up. A cast sheep is also vulnerable to its prey. Remember, the sheep are defenseless. When they feel or are attacked, all they can do really is run away. But if a sheep is cast and on his back, he doesn't even have the ability to run. He's just vulnerable to whatever prey comes against him. David understood this not only from a shepherd's point of view, but David understood this personally. He wrote in Psalm 42:11, "Why are you downcast, O my soul? Why so disturbed within me?" As all of us are, David was guilty of sin, and he knew what it was like to feel down, to feel unworthy, to feel useless because of that sin. He also knew what it was like for God to restore him, to help him back up onto his feet, and to renew him again. There are times that all of us feel downcast. We all feel confused, even worthless at times. But God is there to restore us, to get us back on our feet, to get us reunited with our flock and moving forward. See, when a sheep is indeed cast down, the shepherd will go over to that sheep and will straddle the sheep, put one leg on each side of that sheep. And the shepherd will reach down and gently grab a hold of that sheep, roll it over, stand it up, get it restored into its right position. He'll gently pick that sheep up and get it back on its feet. But the shepherd doesn't stop there. He doesn't just stand it upright and then take off. Oftentimes the sheep is too weak to stand on its own if it's been on its back for too long. So it takes time for that sheep to regain his strength. And the shepherd stays right there with the sheep, gently caressing the sheep, rubbing its legs. You ever had your foot fall asleep and you get those pins and needle feelings? And you don't want to walk on it. The sheep's four legs are, if you will. The shepherd holds that sheep in his arms and comforts that sheep, rubs his legs, talks to the sheep so that the sheep can hear his voice and remain calm. The shepherd will stay with that sheep as long as needed to bring it back from its downcast position. So does Christ do that with us. When we falter, when we fall, when we are helplessly on our back, ripe for our prey, our shepherd picks us up. He holds us tight. He stands over us and comforts us. He speaks to us and brings us calm words so that we don't fret, but know that He is with us. He encourages us. He builds us up. He restores our soul. The next part, He guides in paths of righteousness for His name's sake. Sheep do not know when their surroundings become a problem. What do I mean by that? Sheep will continue to eat on the same patch of land until all the grass is gone. They'll keep walking the same course. They'll create ruts in the ground. They'll even go so far as to eat the roots of the grass so that there's no hope of that grass returning. And once the grass is gone, even the land that's there becomes a problem because it's subjected to erosion and decay and everything else. The shepherd will always look for a fresh pasture for his sheep. The sheep will not only eat the grass away, but the sheep will soil the land as well It's just all part of it. But they'll soil it to the point that there is no good, clean land left, but just waste and parasites. Sheep don't even realize when the area around them is more harm to them than good. But the good shepherd is indeed ever watchful for the surroundings of his flock. A good shepherd wants the sheep to be in good health, yes, but also his land to be in good condition. You see, if the land is well taken care of, it speaks to the reputation of the landowner as a caring shepherd. The sheep trust their shepherd to lead them and to provide them. The more they know their shepherd, the more they trust in his provision. Unfortunately, not every sheep recognizes the voice of his shepherd. So when the shepherd calls, some sheep ignore that call because they don't know the voice that calls to them. And in doing that, they continue down their path of eating the grass to the end, into digging the ruts, not recognizing any of the destruction that lies right ahead of them. When sheep do know their shepherd, when they hear his voice calling, then they follow where he leads. They listen to, they recognize, and that's the key. They listen to their shepherd and recognize his voice. And as the shepherd guides the sheep, leading them down the right path, the sheep's trust builds. Their relationship to their shepherd grows. We must learn to listen to the calling of our shepherd so that we can walk down the path that he wants us to walk. First and foremost, the path to salvation, but also the path to obedience. Obedience to his will, to live out our lives as he would ask us to. Listening and hearing our shepherd's voice builds our trust in him, so that when he calls, we simply follow. We follow the path that he wants us to walk. We leave our current life, our current situation behind us, the one that is actually a harmful, dirty pasture, so that we can move on to the clean land that the Lord gives to us. We can be obedient and listen when he says, "Come, follow me." We can get away from the dirty, pest-infested pastures into the good, clean pasture land that he has for us. Don't ever forget that our shepherd has our best in mind for us. Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you, not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. Be sure that our shepherd cares for us. Why? Because he loves us? Absolutely. But also because we are a reflection of him. Matthew 5:16. In the same way, let your light shine before men, that they may see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven. Just like well cared for, healthy sheep reflect the care and concern of their shepherd. So what we do and what we say to the world around us represents our shepherd, his care, his love for us. He leads us and guides us so that others will see his good works in and through us. We need to remember that our character should always represent that of a loving shepherd, the one that leads us in paths of righteousness for his name's sake and for my benefit.